So what were the polls about Donald Trump? I am so glad that you asked.
Choice for a 2024 presidential election. The actual was Donald Trump winning by about 1.5 points. It rounds to a point. But take a look here. In a polled redo between Donald Trump and Kamala Harris in April of 2025, it was within the margin of error, right? Kamala Harris by a point. But look at where we are now, according to an NBC News SurveyMonkey poll. Kamala Harris wins in a redo, asking folks, essentially, if you could redo the 2024 election, how would you vote? She wins it by, get this, 8 points, a massive shift from what we saw back in November of 2024 when Donald Trump won by a point. And I will note that this sample was weighted to the 2024 result in which Donald Trump won by a point, but yet Kamala Harris in this weighted sample, get this, she wins by 8 amongst the sample that voted for Trump by 1.
That doesn't bode too well for Republicans in the midterms. No wonder they're desperate to push through this Save America Act, which would disenfranchise tens of millions of voters, mostly women. And as delightful as that is, in this video, I was actually referencing a YouGov Economist poll from the first week of February into the second week of February, which shows that Trump's support from Gen Z voters is just it's tanking. Now, in the 2024 election, Donald Trump got 39% of the Gen Z vote, but he got 54% of Gen Z men voting for him. Again, you wonder why Republicans are so desperate to suppress the vote of women. You wonder why the SAVE Act is intentionally targeting women voters. But even amongst Gen Z men, the base has completely fallen out for Donald Trump. So this YouGov Economist poll that came out February 6th through 9th, I believe, said that Donald Trump's support has just absolutely tanked. So right after the election, about 50% of Gen Z gave Donald Trump a positive approval rating because they hadn't seen him do anything yet, right? They were listening to his lies, his promises, his lies, but they hadn't seen him do anything.
Said it was decisive for Donald Trump. How have opinions shifted toward Donald Trump among this group?
Okay, so this, in some ways, you might say this, this doesn't necessarily apply to Donald Trump. It absolutely does apply to Donald Trump. I mean, he has just fallen off a cliff when it comes to Generation Z. Look at this. Donald Trump's net approval rating in February of 2025. John said it right. Wow.
This was actually a month into the administration.
This was a month into the administration. He was at plus 10 points on the net approval rating. He was on the right side of the ledger. Look at this. Falling off that cliff, that is a drop of 42 points to negative 32 points on the net approval rating amongst Generation Z. My goodness gracious, this, as I said, is a very swingy group, and it has swung very much away from Donald John Trump.
A year ago, 50%. Today, right now, 25%. His approval rating is only 25% amongst Gen Z. Now, not only is the news from the beginning of this video that if the election was reheld again today with the same voter base, that Kamala Harris would win by 8 points, definitely something that would burn Donald Trump's biscuits. There's other polling out.
Yeah, okay. So if you know anything about Donald Trump, you know that he built his 2 presidential victories on winning voters without a college degree, while Donald Trump's base with non-college voters is absolutely collapsing. What are we talking about here? Well, why don't we just take a look? Voters without a college degree on Donald Trump. Look at this. Back in 2024, he won those voters over Kamala Harris by 14 points. You come over to this side of the screen. What's his net approval rating with him? He is underwater by 9 points. That's a 23-point switcheroo with his base of non-college voters. He is absolutely collapsing with the group of voters that helped put him into the White House, Kate.
Okay, so how are these non-college voters feeling about 2026?
Okay, so you see this drop of 23 points, right? From plus 14 Trump to now he's underwater by 9 points. At this point, the Democratic base with college voters is rising, and the Republican base with non-college voters is collapsing.
One of the big promises, circling back to the economy, one of the big promises from President Trump was bringing back manufacturing jobs. And that speaks to somewhat of the split that you're kind of highlighting here. What are the hard numbers on this?
Yeah, okay. One of the reasons why Donald Trump has been able to bring non-college voters into the Republican ranks is because he said, hey, I'm going to bring back those jobs, those manufacturing jobs that were lost to free trade, right? Bring in those tariffs, restrict those jobs from moving overseas. But there's just a bit of a problem going on here. How about those manufacturing jobs? In December of 2025, compared to the beginning of the Donald Trump presidency, the manufacturing jobs have gone adios amigos. See you later. They've been going away, down 63,000 versus January of 2025, with an even larger collapse since Liberation Day, right? So what we're dealing with is a Donald Trump message that is not actually meeting the reality, and that is why non-college voters have been going away from the President of the United States and away from Republicans as well.
A Harvard-Harris poll from January 29th shows that 51% of registered voters think that Joe Biden did a better job during his presidency than Donald Trump is doing now. A majority of American voters think that Joe Biden, who was deeply unpopular, right? Neither Democrats, and definitely not Republicans, neither party was really thrilled with Joe Biden. He had a very low approval rating. Most American voters, more than half of American voters, still think he did a better job than Donald Trump is doing now. Which, of course, I think brings up the question of, is anybody telling Donald Trump this bad news? Because we've seen him be just like more and more delusional, talking about how the economy is fantastic, everything is wonderful. Donald Trump is living in this little fantasy land.
Doing it. And they're building AI. We know about that. We're leading China. We're leading everybody and everything. This is the greatest period of anything that we've ever seen. Plus, we have a powerful military, a great military, strong, that I rebuilt in my first term. Because I had a great first term. You remember very well. You were there. But
like I said, Trump is mainlining the copium. I think he's also so demented that he believes the bullshit that he's saying, or his advisors are telling him that, and he believes it. And additionally, if he doesn't believe it, if he knows that it's a con, he knows that it's bullshit, he thinks that we are all so stupid that we can't see the poll numbers, that we aren't looking at our bank accounts, that we aren't living in the United States, and that we're going to believe whatever he says. How fucking insulting. Now, we know that Donald Trump loves to obsessively watch Fox News. A lot of their broadcasting is intended for an audience of one. Although I'm sure Donnie Dwindles is falling asleep to the boob tube more often than not these days, so who knows how much he's really absorbing. But it does raise the question of whether anybody inside his regime is actually giving him any accurate information when it comes to polling. Did anybody tell him, hey, if the election were held today, Kamala Harris would kick your ass? Did anybody tell him, like, hey, people like Joe Biden better than they like you? And I've been thinking about how this relates to something that Gene Sharp talks about in his book, From Dictatorship to Democracy. Hang on, it's right behind me. Gotta grab it. Okay. From Dictatorship to Democracy, he talks about the weaknesses of dictators. A week or two ago, I did a video on the 17 weaknesses of dictatorships, and weakness number 5 is subordinates fearful of displeasing their superiors may not report accurate or complete information needed by the dictators to make decisions. And I saw somebody else talking about this issue earlier today as well.
One of the ways that authoritarian regimes get themselves in trouble is they cut themselves off from knowing bad news in time. Because they demand endless flattery of the leader, the leader does not know that there aren't sausages in the shops. And so what Brendan Carr is doing here is actually, among the people this is no favor for, is Donald Trump. One of the things that was distinctive about Donald Trump 11 years ago was he knew no one's talking about immigration, but I think people care about it. So I'm going to have this sixth sense about what's on people's minds that most people don't want to talk about, and I'm going to make that my issue. Donald Trump of 2026 thinks the economy is good. He doesn't just say it. He really believes it. And Brendan Carr's job, and that of others too, is make sure that Donald Trump never finds out that there's a lot of discontent. Now, if you can completely suppress the elections of 2026, maybe Donald Trump doesn't need that information. But if you can't suppress the elections of 2026, he needs that information, and he's in his last seconds of time where he could make use of the information if he had it. So he's been cut off once again from the news. I mean, how bad are things for Republicans in Texas? I don't know. I'm not following the race that closely. But the people around Donald Trump should be following it obsessively. Right. And they should want to take the measure of James Tallarico. Is this plausible? Will this work? And instead, it's just happy, chirp, chirp, chirp. Don't worry, boss. Everything's fine. There are sausages in the shops.